I'm Austin Lugo.
I'm Andrew Harp.
This is With Nothing to Say.
Let's talk about Secret Honor.
Before we get started today, next week we're going to be watching one of Alfred Hitchcock's greatest films of all time, one of my favorites, Strangers on a Train. Andrew, you requested a Hitchcock film, even though it is my pick, so I wanted to pick something I had seen and you hadn't. How many Hitchcock films have you seen?
I've seen a good handful of them, but all of his like top ones, but not really any of his early stuff at all. You know, my favorite one, I like The Birds a lot,
The Birds is good.
and Psycho's really good, of course,
Psycho's great.
and of course, Vertigo is really good too. But yeah, sounds good. Hitchcock sounds good.
Yeah, Hitchcock he's a really magical. There's just a lot of great work. What's strange about some of Hitchcock's work, of course, Hitchcock's made like 61 films, but a lot of his early work are comedies, it's really strange. Because like his early British stuff, which I think Criterion Channel did like a whole collection of like early Hitchcock comedies. It's very different than his later stuff. But I mean, Hitchcock's so prolific that it's kind of like watching, I don't know, like Kurosawa. I think he has even more films than Kurosawa. So it's interesting to watch his career from kind of the beginning and his early stuff, which is pretty boilerplate in a lot of sense. Nothing really that interesting, but still intriguing to watch. Just early Hitchcock, and then of course his later stuff.
Yeah, Strangers on a Train is like mid-period. It looked like
1950s. Yeah, so like kind of not like super famous 1960s Hitchcock, but someone who has definitely developed a name for himself. I think that's around the same time he started that TV show they did, Hitchcock Presents, which is very good. If any of you haven't seen it, it's quite the watch. Although I don't think you can find anywhere. It used to be on Amazon like 7 or 8 years ago, and I haven't been able to find it since. But it's an incredible show. It's just like it's basically just a bunch of short films. They're not like related anyway. It's not like television. It's just like short films, different actors, different stories, but people should watch it. But Stranger on the Train, that's what we're watching next week.
Secret Honor. We've never seen it. 1984. It is a one-man movie, one-man show. Philip Baker Hall,
the one and only. R.I.P.
R.I.P. recently died. And another thing I didn't really think about when I suggested this movie, and I've referenced this movie to you before, but I never seen it until now. This June marks 50th anniversary of Watergate.
Really?
I didn't really think about it. Philip Baker Hall plays Richard Nixon in this movie. Disgraced post-presidency Richard Nixon. Directed by Robert Altman, which I don't think you've seen any Altman, unless I'm mistaken.
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure I've seen 0 Altman before this film.
I've been watching more of his movies. I watched a bunch of them this week, and I've watched a few this past year or so. He's very good. But Secret Honor is a bit of a divergence of his style. Typically, his movies have huge casts. They're all about like the interaction between characters and characters talking. One of his like trademarks is that his characters in his movies like talk over each other, whether it's like a big group of people talking to each other and they're like talking over each other, or have like conversations going on in the foreground and then also conversations going on in the background. And sometimes he'll fade in and out of like conversations happening in the foreground and background. Like his movies are known to be just very, very like sometimes like chaotic in terms of like how people talk in it. It's not, but so Secret Honor is very different because it's just one guy, but the directing is very Altman-esque. He loves pans and he loves zooms.
He sure does.
he doesn't really, a lot of his movies are like that. In that like he's very simple but very effective. But his movies are simple, but they're very complex in like how everything is like framed in terms of like foreground and background stuff. And honestly, I think that in terms of the directing, obviously this movie is all about the writing and the performance, but in terms of just talking about
Yeah.
the directing, it's probably as great as it possibly can get for something like this, I think.
I think of all the things we talked about, I think this is going to be one of the most challenging. I mean, I guess we've had a couple. Playtime was kind of hard to talk about too, but for almost the inverse reason, where playtime's basically uh, no talking at all. This is, I mean, it's just a man talking basically to himself for 90 minutes in one room, one location, just the one of the great actors of all time, and it's quite the experience. I mean, of course, what an absolutely incredible performance, and the Nixon voice that he does, I love it. It's my favorite Nixon impression.
He doesn't do an impression.
He does a little bit of the like when he gets mad, he does a little bit of the like, I'm not a crook. He's got a little bit of a.
If it is, it's like
It's slight. It's not.
that's the thing. The Philip Baker Hall performance. Look, the Philip Baker Hall performance. I think it works not because he does like a voice. I don't think he does a very much of a voice. Maybe a little bit.
It's just a little bit.
If it is, I barely noticed it. And he also doesn't really change his look too much at all. He doesn't really look like Nixon. He does slick back his hair. The performance is amazing and convincing because I think he's able to spiritually tap into the id of Richard Nixon. It's probably the greatest performance of any United States president ever in any movie. It really does feel like Hall becomes Richard Nixon in a very like psychological way where he's almost being broadcast. He's like broadcasting the spirit of like Richard Nixon through his performance, which, yeah, like I really do think it is at least what I've seen. And I can't imagine anything better than it. The greatest so far, the greatest like performance of a United States president ever. It has to be.
There's just something so raw about it. And I think it's Nixon's a very challenging president to embody, especially during this period, because he's very much disgraced. I think since then, like, there's been slight shifts, although people still hate Nixon quite a bit, which
Nixon's no different than like any like liberal Democrat, honestly. Like he's like pretty much the same as like any like horrible, like he's really no different than like Nancy Pelosi, you know. They have like basically the same like policy ideas. And I mean that in a bad way. Like I don't like Nixon, I don't like Pelosi.
I haven't read a lot about Nixon in particular. I've read a couple of short books specifically about Watergate. And of course, I've read Robert A. Caro's like 5-book series on LBJ, and Nixon is sort of involved at times on that. But something that Nixon talks a lot about in this movie is how JFK stole the 1960 election. And I don't think he mentions in this movie, but the same thing happened with Roosevelt in the uh, not in his first election, although in many of his elections. And so, at least one of the big things in this movie is Nixon doesn't see what he did as wrong in the same way that Lance Armstrong didn't really see what he did as wrong, because he's like, the only difference between Nixon and all the other presidents up to him, which is true, is that they all stole the election. They all did this kind of stuff. Nixon just got caught, and he feels like,
yeah, he got caught because like I mean like yeah, like through actual research done by people, you know, I think it's fair to say that he was made a patsy. You know, he was the fall guy, especially at the behest of the CIA. He was basically like thrown out. You can talk all you want about like Nixon, being like a horrible person and all this stuff, and he is. He's
sure,
horribly racist. In the movie, he's horribly racist.
sure is.
So obviously, like I assume that if you are a president or if you're running for president, you're a sicko. Like you have to be like some kind of like sick individual if you made it that far. You know, you've had to have done some things that are just deplorable. Like you're going to hell. But you know, Nixon was kind of wronged, honestly, with the Watergate thing, because people are probably because like it's like robbery, like you know, it's The Watergate thing is just kind of interesting because I think in retrospect it's it's like it's all the way to the top thing. There are people above the president, you know what I mean, that are more powerful than the president.
I mean, this is a sort of a victimized hallucination, and hallucinatory is probably the best way to describe this film.
He's like racked with paranoia too. It's a very paranoid movie with his like television sets, his camera setups.
That's fascinating to me is, and this is something that happens a lot of the film, is they'll often pan to the television screens, or like a lot of like big moments, they won't happen like us seeing him, but rather we'll be like watching another, like we'll be watching on our television, but then we'll be seeing another television.
I recommend if you like the movie. I watched on Criterion, and they have like a 20-minute interview with Philip Baker Hall about like how he came to like work on the movie. It of course is a play, and he in Los Angeles. Philip Baker Hall is interesting because he's like a New York City actor, and he worked there for years, like in plays and stuff, and he's very skilled. And then someone was like, "You got to go to LA because you're really good," and he's like, "Okay." And he's like 40 something, and he goes there, and he's having a hard time finding work because even though he's amazing, he doesn't have any film credentials or anything like that. So he's like having a hard time. And then like I think this is like an early thing that he does, like a play, and Robert Altman sees the play, and he's like, "I would like to make the movie." And he's like, "Okay." And they film it at the University of Michigan, where Robert Altman was the professor. He was a professor of film there,
Really?
and students worked on the film. Robert Altman directed the film, and I think like a couple key people, like Pierre Mignot, he's like a cinematographer guy who he's used for several films. Like he worked on it. Like, and of course, the play is written by like two guys too. So, but I think everybody else was like students at the University of Michigan, and I think they got to use the space for free. I think that's what Philip Baker Hall said in the interview. He talks about like how Altman was concerned because he's like, look, it's one guy. Like, there's only so many things that I can pan to or kind of like transition to, or to keep it like lively visually. And apparently at the last minute, Altman thought of like the security television sets, like at the last minute, like the day they're supposed to film or the day before. And it's a very brilliant idea.
It's probably my favorite part about this film because it just ingrains the paranoia and this idea of constantly being watched and being a public figure, as it were, and the seemingly terror of once you become president, like for the rest of your life, right? You're always known as Mr. President till the day you die. And especially if you commit some sort of scandal, like that's right. That's Richard Nixon's whole thing is Watergate. Like most people, that's the one thing they know about Richard Nixon. They don't know about any of his legislation. They don't know about anything he did before he was president. And he's just constantly being surveilled and watched. And so, while of course his paranoia is paranoia, there is some truth in it. And I would argue by the end of this film, at least for me, you feel a bit paranoid. And perhaps partly it's because you've listened to 90 minutes of a crazy person talking. I mean, it's just, there's like these insane, like just tangents.
I think it's like effectively entertaining all the way through for the most part. Like I think it keeps your attention enough, like for what it is.
It can be a very challenging film to watch at times just because at its core, it is just one guy in a room. And hats off to Altman. It probably is. I don't think I've seen a lot of these type of films, but I've seen a couple, and it's definitely. I mean, it's just an extremely challenging thing to do well. I mean, shooting a play in general is always challenging, just because plays are so wordy and there's often very few locations.
Apparently, the play, the previews they did for the play was 2.5 hours. It was this for 2.5 hours play. Obviously, it's a play, so it's a little bit different. They're like, yeah, we were able to cut it down to 2 hours for the play. It's like, oh wow, that's interesting. Okay.
I mean, it's good at 90 minutes, but I don't know if I could watch a 2.5 hour version of this.
I think 90 minutes is fine. 90 minutes, like, okay, they're able to cover pretty much every single thing about Nixon in terms of his family, growing up, I guess, all of his little scandals, you know, I think they cover everything nicely in the 90 minutes.
Definitely get you hit all the major points. His weird relationship with his mom.
That stuff throughout the movie is really good. So she's almost like a godlike figure to him. I love the dog stuff. That stuff is amazing. When he like kneels down, that's a perfect scene where he's like I'm your little doggy, and he's like,
So
and
strange.
yeah, he's just like arf, arf. Oh, it's so good. That's so just like that. Of course, is very like exaggerated. Like you need like a like. There's a couple weird moments like that where you kind of have to break away from the monologuing and you just kind of have like a weird kind of just strange, very movie moment. Obvious like very. Did Nixon do stuff like he probably
Probably
didn't,
not.
but
I mean, who knows?
it's just kind of tapping into it a little bit more at a weird, level.
What exactly is Nixon recording? Is he trying to write like an autobiography? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I think he's like he's dictating his memoirs. He's like in his like New Jersey study. The movie, but yeah, he goes like I like the beginning of the movie. He goes in his study, and yeah, I think he's dictating his memoirs to I think someone named like Ricardo or something like that. Oh, Roberto. Yeah, and he's like he comes into his and I love it too. He goes into his study and he opens up a box that he's carrying, and it's just a gun, a loaded gun. It's like, oh, okay, and he's got like whiskey everywhere, and he's got his television cameras, and he's just recalling his life, for probably a book. Cause yeah, he's like, this is going to be the prologue. And he just veers into these tangents and he freaks out. And I love it too. It's so funny when he's like, he goes into a crazy tangent and he kind of comes to and he's like, Roberto, can you delete that whole section, please? Like he's
So funny. It's so funny. I mean, I think like the first time, like it gets a chuckle, but just the fact that throughout the film, it's just like this recurring joke. It's just the tangents become more and more insane. And he's just like, oh, could you just like cut back to which poor Roberto? I mean, this poor man who's got to listen to all these crazy tangents. We don't even know who he is, but quite something.
he's super funny. Yeah. Yeah. Richard Nixon, very interesting. Yeah. And I love it too when he starts recording, he like switches all the televisions to himself. Like not even just like he has like four of them and like some of them are like in the hallway and stuff, but he switches them all to himself, which I think is really good, which I think is obviously like we talked about is a sort of a different image for Altman to cut to outside of like the items, the unmovable items like his photographs and stuff. And I like it to have I like the set. I think the set is fine. It's good. I like obviously like having the portraits of like Henry Kissinger and LBJ and all these people. I don't think Richard Nixon actually had,
Probably not.
but it's obviously it adds like to the visual of him like yelling at a picture of Henry Kissinger or something like that.
Because he hated Kissinger, which I mean it makes sense why he would hate Kissinger.
Just because, yeah, Henry Kissinger was a fucking freak who, yeah, was like, we should do this and do that. And of course, it just once spurred unpopularity, you know, onto Nixon ultimately. And yeah, he goes on that tangent about how like Kissinger won the Peace Prize and he got called like a mad bomber, even though it was Kissinger's idea to do the nonstop 24/7 Vietnam War bombings. Obviously, they're both implicated. But yeah, it is kind of weird how Kissinger, he's still alive and he's still venerated. So it's interesting.
It was Ford that was after him, right? Gerald Ford. That was the next.
But yeah, like Gerald Ford, like he brings up Gerald Ford about how like mad he was that he was given a pardon for his crime, but he's like, I was never convicted. I never went to court. Why would he give me a pardon? That just makes people think that like I am guilty for my crime, which he probably is. Obviously, it's more complex than that.
Right. In Nixon's mind, he thinks that by going to court, he could prove his innocence. Like he feels like he never, at least in the movie, he feels like he never had the chance to prove his innocence. Like he's constantly
He was never given a chance
to say his side of the story.
to bring his own side of the story, which his side of the story is still like, he's going off on his side of the story, but obviously it implicates some very wide conspiracies, which are hard to believe, but are believable in terms of U.S. politics and history at this time.
It wouldn't be that far fetched.
My favorite part is when he's going off. My favorite parts, I should say, are when he's going off about Bohemian Grove and the Committee of 100. That stuff is very interesting. I think the Committee of 100 is like kind of a made up thing. The Bohemian Grove is a real thing, which is like basically like the Bohemian Grove is this place in California that's occupied by the Bohemian Club, which is basically just like rich, famous people, basically white men, rich, famous white men, and it's basically just like basically post college fraternizing, like frats, basically. They do actually like crazy. They have like security there, like no one can go in. Richard Nixon was a part of it. Ronald Reagan was a part of it. I read that Richard Nixon said in a tape, he just even though he was part of Bohemian Grove, I think he was Richard Nixon's weird. I think he comes from like a working class background, which he talks about in the movie. I think he only was a part of Bohemian Grove just to kind of, hang out with people and get power, and to eventually help him become president because he kept on losing, right? Like he lost to Kennedy and stuff, and which he talks about.
He lost so many times.
Yeah, he talks about like I like that in the movie. He kind of talks about like how he's basically like he's a loser, but he's not a quitter, right? Like he's a loser, but he's not a quitter. And so he eventually did win. But even when he did win, he lost. But I think he describes the group on a tape using the F slur. So I don't think he liked them at all. I don't think he liked hanging out with them all in the movie and in real life. Yeah, the Bohemian Grove, it's real and it's funny. There's a really good John Ronson. John Ronson's like a British like a journalist. He and Alex Jones. John Ronson's more like a progressive liberal guy. And of course, Alex Jones is an InfoWars guy. They together they broke into Bohemian Grove and they witnessed like an effigy burning that they were doing, which was real. Like it was an actual like effigy burning. And Alex Jones, like, he's like, satanic worship and da 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 da. But John Ronson, who's very more level headed about it, he's just kind of like, they're just partying, which it's still kind of weird. Like all these like powerful people meeting, like it almost feels like it should be like illegal.
Nefarious.
Yeah, a little
Yeah.
nefarious. Yeah. So it's real, but it's like probably not Satan worship. And even if it was, it's like, yeah, it's just the fact that they get together is weird. I like all the Committee 100 Bohemian Grove stuff.
I mean, it's just the insane ramblings of, I guess, real things. So, like, I guess that's what kind of reels you in is at the beginning of the film, Nixon seems pretty level headed for as much as this man can be level headed. But the spiral, even though like these tangents are like a little crazy, I would say like the ones at the beginning are just like silly. But by the end, they are just the speakings of a madman. And I think what makes this film so terrifying is you're kind of pulled into his madness. You kind of feel his paranoia. I mean, with the video cameras and the idea that there's four different images, right? There's four different versions of Nixon, and just the constant moving of the camera, which I mean, you kind of have to do when you're shooting one person, one room. You have to have a lot of camera movement, but it's just constantly moving and you're just constantly like running around. And Nixon through the whole film is just like walking around.
Yeah. Apparently, Philip Baker Hall talked about Altman had this like crazy tripod thing. Like Hall didn't apparently like there were very few of them in the world. He had like one out of like 10 or 11. And it's like a camera tripod that moves around but also moves up and down. So it's like this like a very like weird, complicated tripod for its time where he's able to like, and Hall talked about how like he really had to coordinate with the cameraman as he's running around and stuff because they would run into each other sometimes because it's like because they're long takes, it's like very interesting. Altman's a master. He's so fucking good. This movie was like better directed than I thought it was going to be. I mean, I love Altman, but yeah, it's like, what do you even do for something like this? And like I said, I just think that obviously like the writing and the performance is what really shines through, but I was really surprised how good like the directing is. Like it really takes you on a journey, I think. Yeah, I like how he like wears like his like it's like his cigar jacket. It's like a robe, like a red robe
It's like a
and stuff.
maroon. Yeah. He's still got his tie on though. And it's interesting get up.
His hair becomes more and more disheveled over the course of the movie as well, of course, because yeah, he's like we said, he's really doing a lot of movement. He's running around and stuff. He's throwing shit around the room. He doesn't really like trash the room, but he gets like papers and books and he like throws them around.
He gets super sweaty.
He gets super duper sweaty. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I mean, yeah, it's like very physical, and for his age, I mean, that's crazy. for me.
It's impressive.
And I mean, for a play, the play, like that to me is insane. Like 2.5 hours of this. I hope they had an intermission or a break or something for him because I mean, that's just insane.
I'm sure.
But I love his performance. One of the things that Hall talks about too that I think really adds to it. Hall like read the script and he wasn't sure how to do it. And he's just like, I don't want to do it. This seems like impossible. And he added the idea, and it's in the movie very clearly, of like Nixon being unable to finish a thought.
So that in the original play, it's not like that.
Well, like I don't think that was like in the script, like in the screenplay or the whatever you want to call it. Like in the writing, it's like he has like the script and he read it and he's like, this is cool, but like I don't know how to like, act it, it seems kind of difficult. But I think Paul thought of the idea of like, what if like Nixon had a really hard time like finishing these thoughts, like, you know what I mean? And I think that definitely elevates to his like age, his paranoia, his how he's just kind of like jumping around and stuff. It kind of has also this sense of like uh he's old, he's gonna die soon, and he's kind of feeling like I said, anxious about like wanting to get out everything that he's seen and learned throughout his whole life. And so he's just completely manic and all over the place. So I think it really adds to that as well.
Yeah. It also keeps the viewer involved because I think there's not a whole lot of tension in this film from a basic visual standpoint, because again, as we keep saying, it is just like it's a play. So I think by not ever finishing a thought, you're kind of always like waiting for it to be done. So like you're kind of just falling along with them. And again, it also brings you down into that spiral slowly, kind of, okay, right, we're bringing on to this, we're going on to this, going to this. And so I think if it had been more clear or concise or perhaps less rambling y, I don't think you would have had the same experience. I think it probably would have been a dull experience. And again, just all the hats off to everyone involved in this to not make this boring, because this could very easily be a very boring film. Like it could just be right, a man sitting in a chair talking for 90 minutes, like just a 90-minute podcast of a man talking about being president. And it's not, which is good.
It's definitely a triumph. And it's pure Nixon id, in my opinion. It just feels like with the combination of Paul's like sensibilities and performance along with the writing, he's able to achieve something that I think is almost just unachievable, is that he really does feel like he's tapping into the spirit of Richard Nixon. I think like some of this stuff isn't real, especially when you get to the end where he's like talking about like the reason why he coordinated the Watergate scandal was so that he could get out of the presidency, because he thought that like him like dealing with the committee of 100, like they wanted him to run for a third term or something like that so he could like be president so they could continue the Vietnam War, so that the committee of 100, which I think is not a real thing, could continue to make money. Well, it's not a real thing. I don't think there's any like secret organization called the committee of 100, but I'm sure there are similar secret organizations like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is probably like a little like made up, but I'm sure that certain people were making money off of heroin as the Vietnam War continued.
I'm sure there are plenty of nefarious organizations which influenced and continue to influence US politics, presidency. So, of course, Nixon's an extremely paranoid man, but not like that far off.
I don't think it's that far off. No. Yeah, I love when he gets angry too. Like when Hall gets angry, it's so good. Like just like a son of a bitch. Like you're just fucking cocksucker. Like he just completely, I just love when he's like cursing and stuff. He like really grits his teeth and gets in there, and he just like son of a bitch. Like it's so good. Like I love that. It's so much fun to watch him really tap into that, and really like when he gets angry and really tap into that anger.
Yeah, I love how quickly he can shift from like being really angry to like depressed to confused to excited. I I don't even manic, I guess perhaps is the best word. But his ability to just shift from one emotion to another in a matter of just seconds is really fun to watch because just like looking at his face, 1 second he'll just be like furious, and then like it'll just like click, right? Something will just change, and suddenly he's just like super sad. I think that's one of the most challenging parts of a great performance. Isn't so much like being able to give those kind of like really big, anger or sadness or any of that stuff. I think it's more the ability to kind of change routes to like kind of move on a dime, which is something Paul here is the master of.
Yeah, Hall. But yeah, it just shows you that Hall is like. It just shows that Hall is like. Yeah, he's a master because he's like in control. He's like very much in control with that. That shows you how seasoned and talented he is, and how maybe not even talented is the right word. Just like yeah, seasoned. Like he's like done it a lot, so he has a lot of control. He's very good at it. With the writing and with the monologue, I think too, like that jumping around also comes through when he's talking about himself in particular. Obviously, we've talked a lot about like him talking about like different things and different people. I will say too, I love the part where like I said, we established he has a gun. I like when he's talking into the camera and he's holding the gun, he's like waving it around and he's like talking about like liberals and like the press or whatever. I love that part where he's like waving it around like he's gonna like shoot at the microphone or something. That's also a little silly. I doubt Nixon did that, obviously. Like that's just like kind of like a character thing that they added, right? Of him like taking the gun and like throwing it around and shit. And I love that shit. But like I said, like I was talking about, I love when he's talking about himself because it's like he barely knows who he is.
Yeah, this is definitely a person just falling into the depths of just pure insanity. And I love they do this more at the end, but at the beginning, a lot of times whenever they shoot the televisions, they often shoot all four, or they'll do multiple ones at once. But as the film progresses, it moves a lot more to just shooting like a single one. And then he'll do this thing where Hall will be talking, or Nixon or whoever will be talking, and they'll do a dolly from like one to like the next to the next to the next. And you can kind of see him move from like one emotion to another. And it's cool because it's almost like you're looking at like film stock, right? And you're looking at each individual image. And it's like, it's kind of this forward movement of Nixon going from one motion to a back. And then near the end, they'll like go from left to right and then they'll go back from right to left. And it's just like adjusting um, his emotional state. I think it's a really fascinating way to visually show these emotions without having to do any real, you know, uh, advanced camera trickery, right? At the end of the day, it is really just a camera dollying left to right or right to left, but it's a really exceptional way of showing the demise of a man who just can't take anything anymore.
And like I said, he's so complicated that even he himself doesn't even know like who he is. He's self-deprecating, but he is also thinks high of himself. He's aware of his faults, but he also feels like is like a martyr, like he feels like he's been martyred, which I wouldn't say that Richard Nixon was a martyr. He was probably wronged in some kind of way, but he's also a really bad person. Like we said, especially like when he's like racist. It's like when he's racist in the movie. I love that part where he's talking about Cuba and Fidel Castro as well. That part of the movie is like very interesting because I think there's something very true about it, where he's talking about how like he lost like the 1960 election by John F. Kennedy because John F. Kennedy appeared more like hardline against Cuba than Nixon because John F. Kennedy had information from the CIA about Cuba and like kind of their operations. So Nixon appeared, which is kind of funny because he's the Republican candidate, but Nixon appeared more soft on Cuba than JFK did, which might have been a reason as to why JFK beat Nixon. And then, of course, JFK's brains were blown out by the CIA, allegedly. I like that part where he's talking about Cuba and he's like talking about Castro and stuff like that, about him like visiting. And like, I could go on and on about like all the different like parts of like Nixon's life that he kind of goes into because he's a very interesting guy. If you don't know anything about Nixon, it might be a difficult movie to watch.
It might be a bit confusing.
I followed it mostly fine. Like if you don't know the names of certain people, like certain US presidents and stuff like that, like if you don't know like at least like a decent amount of like US political history, you might struggle a little bit.
Yeah, there's definitely a certain context that's required for this film, which maybe when it came out, that was, I'm sure, was much more common knowledge because it came out in like in the mid 80s. So, at that point, Nixon only been out of office for 10 to 15 years. So I imagine what people knew of Nixon then and now was probably a bit different. So it was much more on topic of, and he was still alive at the time of the making of this movie. So, which I can only imagine there's no way Nixon didn't watch this movie. Like, there's no way.
He probably didn't see it. I don't think he gives a fuck about movies.
Yeah, but it's about him. I don't know.
I guess it's like, but it's like a low key movie too. Like, I, I don't know if they play this in theaters at all. It is like a very low budget movie. It's 4:3, and it kind of almost looks like a television episode, almost like it looks like a TV show or something. But it's fine, just because like at the end of the day, it's about the performance and the writing, and but Altman's directing is completely suitable and great for the material. But it is like a 4:3 like production, almost like a television production, but it's fine. It's not a big deal.
It works. I mean, at the end of the day, it works. So all the other stuff, I guess it doesn't really matter as long as it brings across the point, which is
Nixon's insane. Nixon's probably super paranoid. It is kind of funny to like imagine. I'm sure it was funny at the time to imagine like what is Nixon doing right now? You know what I mean? Like what I'm guessing that's where the script came from. Like what is Nixon? What is Richard Nixon? Like what is he doing right now? You know, like what is he thinking about? He's probably thinking about the fact that like he will forever be a disgraced president, even though the things that he did are no better or different than stuff that John F. Kennedy did. You know, like John F. Kennedy, like he oversaw like the Bay of Pigs, you know, a complete blunder, and basically, you know, just like an unapproved admission of war on the country of Cuba, which, you know, all the things with Cuba during that time are just unbelievable. The stuff that JFK sought over. But of course, you know, Richard Nixon, you know, the Vietnam War at the time too. So I mean, you know, it's not like, and then LBJ, of course, like, you know, all these people are horrible and they've done horrible things. So the fact that Richard Nixon himself was, you know, impeached and then he stepped down, it's not like he's that different than any of these other guys.
yeah. I think honestly, if JFK hadn't been killed, I doubt people would see him in the light they did because of course, Bay of Pigs, and then also, you know, the Vietnam War was technically, I mean, it wasn't declared, but it was technically started under JFK. And then it was just continued by LBJ and, of course, Nixon. But then for some reason, Nixon is blamed, which he did not handle it well.
Once again, Nixon, not that different than any like powerful, some of our most powerful Democrats in the United States. No different than Richard Nixon.
No, that's good to think about.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I love it so much. Maybe a little bit less racist, just a little bit though.
I hope so. I hope they're a little bit less racist than because Richard Nixon was quite something.
I mean, Richard Nixon also created the EPA.
That's true. So I mean, he's not all bad. He did that. Like he did a good thing, like a thing that's genuinely. I mean, everyone's done everything in their power to end EPA since it was created, but he did a thing.
A thing that I would say is generally would be a popular, you know, thing. And you know, and the movie is interesting. I don't really know too much about Richard Nixon, but I didn't really know any of the stuff about like his like him coming from like a working class background. Of course, he talks about him being a football player and stuff. He loves football. In the Hunter S. Thompson book, Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail, which I think was the 72 election. I forget what exactly election it was, but he goes on the campaign trail with all these like different candidates. And I think he talks about meeting Richard Nixon, who he hated. Hunter S. Thompson did not like Richard, but he was able to meet with him and talk with him and interview with him. But Richard Nixon didn't want to talk to anything. The only thing that Richard Nixon wanted to talk to Thompson about, this was his only stipulation, is that they had to talk about football and nothing else. Because yeah, Hunter S. Thompson, he loves sports, he loved football, and Richard Nixon, of course, was a football player. He loved football, so funny guy.
I love that. Which I guess kind of goes back into the dog thing, the carnival barker stuff, and him like yelling and selling whatever because that's what they had to do because back in their day,
Yeah,
whatever, blah 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 blah.
yeah. And once again, the way that he talks about himself is just, I love that, because he's a man for the people, but he's also like he's like commiserating with all these like elites and stuff like that too, and he kind of almost becomes one, but not really. But I didn't really know anything about like his working class background, and he also like kind of touches on the fact that like he had two brothers that died of tuberculosis, which I didn't know about either. So that was interesting to learn about, and all this stuff with his mom, as we discussed, very good. Like I said, he kind of like looks at his mom as like kind of like this godly figure, and whenever he talks about something that he did wrong, clearly he sort of turns his attention to his mother, and he's like, mother, I'm so sorry, like he's like begs for forgiveness from his mother. He knows he has sinned, so he's trying to confess to his like dead mother, the spirit of his dead mother. And like too, like he's like, where's my mother's Bible, where
The like world's largest Bible.
yeah, it's like the oldest Bible in the world. It's the first Bible ever created. It's like
So
he's like,
fucking
yeah, my
big.
mother's Bible, and he's like looking through it and stuff. That is really good. That was really fucking good. And yeah, I just love like, and like we talked about, like when he's like arfing like the dog shit. It's just a perfect moment. I like too when he like arfs three times. He's like arf, arf. And then when he arfs a third time, it's like more forlorn or melancholic. Like just like he's like that good an actor. Like he's able to
He really is
he's able to distinguish between two different like sayings of the word arf. It's just I can't believe that.
truly a master of the craft.
It's just fucking crazy, motherfucker. Apparently, like Philip Baker Hall made this movie. It didn't really get him a ton more roles. Like it didn't really make him super famous. But I guess he was on set for something, for like some show or movie. And Paul Thomas Anderson was like a PA. He was a volunteer PA for some production. And he came and Paul Thomas Anderson went up to Philip Baker Hall and he's like, hey, I love Secret Honor. It's my favorite movie. And I would love for you if you could act in one of my productions. And of course he went on being the lead actor on his first feature, Heart Aid. So and then he would end up in a bunch of other ones too. Magnolia, I don't know, but I think he's in Boogie Nights.
He's in Boogie Nights. Yeah, he is.
So yeah, without Secret Honor, we wouldn't have like those great Philip Baker Hall, Paul Thomas Anderson film performances. Which I didn't know that. I didn't know. I think at the time, maybe it's changed, but I guess at the time that was his favorite movie, Paul Thomas Anderson's favorite movie. And honestly, though, like Magnolia, Boogie Nights, now that I think about it, they're really not that different than some of these Robert Altman movies. They're very similar, honestly. Like the way that people like talk and like big cast, and especially like I said, especially those like Magnolia, Boogie Nights, maybe Licorice Pizza type movies, which they're period pieces and they have this sense of place. Like Nashville is like, I haven't seen it, but it's like apparently his greatest movie, where it's like almost 3 hour long movie about like politics and music in Nashville, Tennessee. And Boogie Nights, I'm guessing is exactly the same, except it has to do with like the pornography industry in like California. So obviously probably a lot to borrow from Altman, and Anderson, PTA borrowing a lot from Altman. It's like probably proto PTA, to be honest. And to kind of talk about like the title of the movie, Secret Honor, the end, like we talked about, like the end, he goes on this really big tangent where he's talking about how he staged the Watergate scandal so that he would have secret honor, so that he could get out of the presidency, because they wanted him, like I said, to continue the Vietnam War so they could make more drugs, more money on drugs. But he had the secret honor of bowing out of it. But the public, ridicule, the public hate, because he did the Watergate scandal. He sort of like became this target, which I think all that stuff is mostly like half true, but I like that the martyrdom, that like this, I brought this martyrdom onto me because, but he's still like implicated in the Watergate scandal and the Vietnam War up till that point, which thousands of people died in.
It just goes to show you that you can't beat Nixon. He's always gonna think he's on the right side of history. He's from beginning to end. He thinks he's doing the right thing. He has the secret honor. He chose to resign.
He puts the blame squarely on others for the most part. Once again, plenty of other people to blame. Still, he's the guy.
He is the guy. But they broke Chekhov's gun. They broke the Chekhov's gun. He brings a gun in the first act, and he never fires the gun.
He never fires it. He's gonna shoot. He almost shoots himself in the head, but he's like, "They want me to kill. They want to kill me. They want me to kill. They want me to kill myself." And like, it's like I won't give them. Like they're gonna have to kill me. It's like, they're gonna have to do it themselves if they want me to die. Which that's a hard ass scene. Hard ass. That's good. That goes hard as fuck because it's just like, I'm not gonna give them the satisfaction of me killing myself. The thing about Secret Honor is that like he's like dictating all this stuff once again on to his tape recorder, and of course it's the idea is that like this will never become public.
He just wanted to be a good president.
I wanted to be like Lincoln.
Yeah, that's his like role model. Like when he was a kid, that's who he wanted to be.
I wanted to be Lincoln, but then I learned, and I forget what else he says after that.
Like he wanted to be Lincoln, but then he learned that Lincoln actually didn't free the slaves because he wanted to free the slaves. He just did it because like it was politically the correct move. The same thing happens to Nixon, right? He thinks he's doing the right thing, but in the end, he's just doing the same thing every other major politician and president does, which is just creating the facade of doing the right thing.
Do what they're told, basically.
Yeah.
Being schmoozed by guys like Henry Kissinger to do one thing, but it turns out to be a horrible miscalculation, and it's really just about money. But of course, once again, Nixon still implicated in all of this, but it feels like he is a martyr. He's a victim, which is interesting. I'd recommend it to anyone, but it does kind of have that like barrier of like American political history that you might need to understand a little bit. But other than that, very good.
Yeah, definitely worth. And at only 90 minutes, it is a pretty quick watch, so it's not taking too much time out of anyone's life, and definitely worth it just to sit down and watch. I mean, even if it's just to watch Philip Baker Hall go crazy for 90 minutes, this is the place to do it. Like it's for no other reason than just that.
Honestly, yeah. Like once again, it's all about the writing and the performance, but really the performance, of course, is a thing that's right in front of your fucking face, and it is just so unbelievably masterful in that regard.
All right, Andrew, you want to go first today?
Yeah, I pretty much said what I wanted to say. Just great movie. For what it is, it's just really great. It's just I like the shit like this. I like kind of like weird conspiracy, like American political history shit, especially during this time, which was completely weird. And yet Nixon, very interesting. And once again, it's a great movie because I think Hall is able to really tap into the brain, into the spirit of Richard Nixon, which is not something that I think most people want to do or care about doing. But like Hall really does it like full force. And, it's just a really great movie. And I'll give it an 8 out of 10.
Completely agree. Incredible performance. Some really great directing, especially given the constraints. Great writing. Of course, you do have to accept the minimal budget that it's shot on, which is just how it is. So that 4:3 aspect ratio, the lighting, that kind of stuff. But genuinely entertaining time. I did get lost at times through all of the ramblings, just because it goes in a lot of directions, and there is a lot of context to take in, which I was grateful to have. So that can be a barrier for some, and I can understand why that would be. I think at the end of the day, I think technically it's a very fascinating experience, and I'm very much impressed with everyone involved in it. At the end of the day, it is a person sitting in a room talking. So I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10. Really, I mean, a good film all around. And, there are plenty of films which I would argue that aren't as good that have given higher scores, but I can only spend so long watching someone go on crazy ramblings before it gets a little exhausting by the end. So, all right, y'all. Thank you all for listening. You can find this podcast wherever you hear podcasts. You can also find us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at With Nothing to Say Pod. And you can find anything I do at Austin Lugo12.
Find me on Twitter at ADHarp24. Also on Letterboxd at RetroRanger, RETR0 Andrew.
And thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much.